Hello and welcome to the Top Agent Podcast. My name is Costa and I chat with top industry leaders in real estate to discuss their successes, tips, and marketing strategies. This podcast series is brought to you by Web for Realty, the leading provider in real estate marketing tools to grow your business. If you're looking to attract leads, build relationships, and close more deals, go to webforrealty.com to learn more. I'm really excited to share this episode. I'm speaking with Ryan Lalonde, the president and partner of MLS Canada. For those who don't know, MLS Canada is a pre-sale, sales, and marketing organization. They help builders and developers facilitate their projects from beginning to end, starting from initial advisory, pricing, and design strategy, and all the way to sales, marketing, customer support. Their clients include some of the biggest developers and builders in the country. So if there's anyone that's in tune with Vancouver and Canadian real estate as a whole, it's definitely Ryan. So we had a great chat. We got into many topics, including the pre-sale market, of course, and the state of the market in Vancouver. We talk about some of the issues in the pre-sale market, like lack of transparency provided to buyers and how MLA is helping with that. We talk about the affordability issues and some things that need to be done to help home buyers. We're also talking about sales and marketing, something that Ryan is an expert in, and why technology has not changed enough in real estate. So these are just some of the subjects we get into. This is a jam-packed episode full of amazing insights. Also, make sure you check out the show notes from this episode as well, because I'm sharing MLA's annual industry report that they put out. They literally spend hundreds of hours on this report. It includes analysis on the last 12 months, micro and macroeconomic influences that are shaping the future of real estate, costs of construction, development timelines, and much, much more. So make sure you check out that link for your copy in the show notes. All right, so enough of the intro. Let's get into it. Here is my chat with Ryan Lalonde. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on the Top Agent Podcast. Really excited for you to be here.
Hey, thanks for having me out. I'm also looking forward to today's show.
Amazing. So if you don't mind kicking things off by just telling us a bit about yourself, your background, and what you're up to today.
Sure, happy to. So I guess when we start with the background, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure.
My childhood was spent in the South Okanagan. I grew up in a small town called Penticton, which is about 5 hours drive east of Vancouver. And I would say a similar childhood to many. Lots of time on the lakes, on boats, tons of mountain biking as I was a teenager. Lived the first 18 years of my life there, and I'm in real estate now, and a lot of my memories of Penticton actually revolved around sport and spending a lot of time on job sites. My parents have always been active builders. They built all of their family homes. It seemed like every year or two we'd be moving into a new home, and so many of my childhood memories kind of center around working the job site with my father and my mother and my grandparents. Of course, my siblings were there as well. So spent all of my summers in university back in the Okanagan as well. But finally graduated from UVic, ended up traveling with my girlfriend at the time back to Vancouver. I'm lucky to say that a few years later we were married, and Vancouver has been home ever since. So been active in real estate for the majority of my time that I've lived in Vancouver. Fell in love with the industry, I guess fresh out of university, and I've played pretty much every role in the industry, everything from real estate agent through to marketing, and now being a very active sales leader within the industry. My title is president of MLS Canada, and I oversee client management and operations of our organization with the help and support of my partners. And so we specialize in multifamily project marketing. Our primary focus is Western Canada, but we also have very active programs and services in both lease up and rental management.
Okay, that's amazing. Thanks so much for painting that picture of your background. So MLA Canada, I want to just dive into that a little bit. Like for the listeners that don't know, I know you briefly touched on it, but what do you guys do exactly? Who do you guys help? And if you can narrow in on that a little bit.
I appreciate the question. So MLA Canada stands for McNeil, Lalonde and Associates, and we are a pre-sale multifamily sales and marketing organization. Our purpose, if you will, is to innovate and create meaningful real estate experiences. This is something that is at our heart. It's something that we're incredibly passionate about. When I think about real estate, I think less about selling homes, as do my partners, and we think considerably more about how are we just impacting all of those moments from the time that somebody first picks up the paper and maybe sees an ad all the way through to when somebody's receiving a set of keys from us. Our hope is just to add value throughout every part of that life cycle. And I think that it's something that is very close to our hearts when it comes to customer service and making sure that we're supporting our clients in a very meaningful and deep way. I love the restaurant business, and something that I've really enjoyed about that side of our industry, about that industry, is the need for everything to be personalized, the need for everything to be not necessarily means to an end, but actually the end in itself. And this is something that we try to take a lot of different retail industries and try to bring it back into our own business.
That's awesome. How long has MLA been around now?
So MLA was established officially 3 years ago through a merger between two organizations. One was Mac Marketing Solutions, and the other was Boulevard Marketing Group. Cameron and I came together with our partners, Shana McQuiston and Susanna Goncalves, approximately 3 years ago. And the focus of that coming together was about trying to imagine a way to evolve the way that we do real estate, the way that we market and sell homes. And I think for us, is paying very close attention to experience and paying very close attention to technology and how those two will change the way that we interact with real estate over the next decade.
Gotcha. So curious, like what problem did you see that needed solving, like before starting MLA? I think that there's a number of problems that we're all aware of in our industry. One of the biggest, potentially one of the biggest, is the lack of transparency that exists in the pre-sale marketplace when a home buyer is searching for a new home. I think that it's incredibly challenged to understand project to project, the offering, pricing, and maybe some of the really important details for a home buyer that a home buyer requires in order to make an informed decision. And I think our position on this is that technology will have significant change over the next 2 to 3 years in not only how you purchase a home and the information that's going to be available, but then also how that information around home buyers is going to be used. And so the biggest challenge that we felt was in front of us was the ability to capture incredible data that we have at the point of transaction and then be able to bring that upstream and be able to shape real estate in a very different way than what we were able to do in the past. Yeah, it makes total sense. I do want to jump into technology as well, but before that, I'm just outside of Toronto, and I know pre-construction in the Toronto area just seems to be never ending. What's the current state of pre-construction in Vancouver? I would say it's very different than Toronto. Toronto's a booming marketplace right now for pre-sale. We follow it very closely. Our friends at Urban Nation also allow us to understand that market closely. Pre-sale in Vancouver has gone a very different path. We've had considerable changes in taxation policy over the past 18 months, and the end result has been some stagnation. Vancouver this year will likely release somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 units into the marketplace. That is the lowest in the last 5 years. It's down about 75% from where we were across a 5-year average. So to say that, I guess to be frank, it's certainly far
we've seen far less volume than what we've had in the past. But it does feel like, similarly to resale, that it's beginning to come back alive. Real estate sales in the greater Vancouver area over the past 12 months have continually show increases in transaction rate for the last 6 months straight. We're seeing sales ratios increase from the 8 to 10% that they were maybe in the early part of this year. Now they're sitting or hovering close to 17.5% as of the end of September. We're waiting for October stats to come out in the next 24 to 48 hours. And my guess is that we're going to see those trends continue. And so resale would be the leading indicator, and pre-sale typically follows. And from our expectation, we'll set up for a very busy spring and summer of 2020.
Makes sense. So you said 3,000 to 4,000 units lower, like in pre-construction units? So the average number of multifamily pre-sale units that has hit the Vancouver marketplace over the past 5 years is approximately 10,000. This year we'll release, it appears, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000. So we're down approximately 70 to 75% in units to market. And this is in a large part because many developers have chosen to hold back inventory, hold back project launches in hopes of a more favorable market or environment in early 2020. MLA alone is sitting with approximately 18 projects on its books ready for marketplace and waiting for the right timing to make sure that, one, we are maximizing our absorption process and making sure that we're securing our pre-sale financing test. And then two, also ensuring that there's sufficient demand to ensure that project absorbs consistently throughout the life cycle up until completion. Gotcha. I was going to ask as well, like, what do you think is driving like that decrease in units, other than what you just mentioned? Like, I know you suggested like taxation policy changes and sort of builders holding back a bit and waiting for more favorable market opportunities. Is there anything else that you think is maybe driving that decrease?
Yeah, certainly. I think, we touched on how quickly taxation policy, we've seen incredible tax changes and their implications over the past 18 months. I think that our U.S. trade wars, specifically between China, has a huge impact on our marketplace. I was looking at some recent statistics around this, and since Trump has come into office, we've seen Chinese investment into the United States drop by nearly 80%. It was hovering around 45 billion 2.5 years ago. Today, we're lucky in 2019 if it breaks or breaches over 5.5 billion. And I think that we'd be naive to think that doesn't have a huge outcome or impact on the Canadian marketplace, specifically Vancouver, where many new immigrants choose to land. I think Toronto is another interesting opportunity. We have so many investors that have been very active in the Vancouver marketplace over the past 5 years. Look further east as that market continues to do very well. And I think that that's specifically tied to the provincial elections. We have an NDP government that has been very active in sharing its interest around the long-term willingness to support foreign investment. And I think that over the last 18 months, we've seen a backlash to some of the policies that were brought in. And then, of course, the final nail in the coffin has been our stress test, the way that the mortgages have changed for Vancouver, right? And the amount of affordability that has been eliminated as a result of that, I think has been substantial enough. And that's really caused a ripple effect throughout all marketplaces, all neighborhoods within Vancouver.
Yeah, makes total sense. I know you guys issue, is it an annual report?
That's right. The MLS Canada annual pre-sale report.
Okay. You obviously seem to be very, analytical and data driven, which is amazing. First of all, how do people get a hold of that report?
So I'm happy to share it in the notes following this podcast. For us, it's something that we share throughout the industry. It's an incredibly comprehensive document, hundreds and hundreds of hours of research and due diligence is put into this document. For us, we are analytical in nature. We think that out of better understanding comes the opportunity for better design. And so from our perspective, we think the way that we design homes and the way that we shape our programs needs to be driven in part by data. And I think that that's the big change in our industry that's happening right now. Access to data is happening in such a different manner than where we were at, say, 3 years ago. And we think that that's going to continue to change. Our organization has an advisory department. These are a series of analysts and home designers that work exclusively within our firm. These aren't consultants. These are employees. And we spend hours and hours every day trying to understand market statistics, trying to understand what developers are cutting edge in terms of home design, and what type of product is speaking really well to our target audiences in various submarkets.
Yeah, that sounds super valuable for sure. So you obviously work with a lot of builders and developers, and sticking with sort of the policy side, I guess, like a huge concern, and I know Toronto, Vancouver is about housing affordability. I know there's not just one answer for this, but I'm curious to hear your take. But what do you think developers can do to help with the affordability issue in Vancouver?
Well, I love the question. I think that developers' core business is delivering homes to home buyers. So I don't know that we need to necessarily look towards developers in order to change the way that they do business. They're motivated in order to sell more homes. I think the biggest challenge that we have is incredible challenges of supply of density from cities functioning throughout the Lower Mainland. Right now we have a taxation problem that curbs demand, and we have financial restrictions around mortgage applications that curbs demand of buyers. Those are two really important levers that have been pulled aggressively over the past 24 months, and they've had profound impacts on the Lower Mainland's state of market. I also think that if we can find a way of cutting through the noise when it comes to affordability, we have so many politicians, both federally and provincially, that are using the affordability as a really important soundbite. This fuels their campaigns, this secures them votes, but what we're not actually seeing is action. And so we see an NDP government promise over 110,000 units in the marketplace over 10 years in Vancouver. To date, they delivered far less than that. And in the same time that we've delivered 700 in Vancouver, Seattle's built 11,000. And I know that that's on the rental supply side of the market, but I think that it's the same challenges that we have with the for-market and pre-sale marketplace. We just are not able to unlock density fast enough to be able to appeal to the 30 to 50,000 immigrants that are choosing Vancouver as their home. And the end result is that we're borrowing from the future in order to drive down affordability. I think that when we look forward 2 years from now and we think about the state of the pre-sale marketplace and how little homes have come to market over the past 18 months, what we're going to realize is that we lost an entire year of pre-construction building. 10,000 doors by the time that the dust settles on these policies will have been lost from the marketplace. Great today. We've seen changes in our resale marketplace. We saw prices drop anywhere from 15 to 30% on different parts of the marketplace throughout the Lower Mainland. We've seen pre-sale come off anywhere from $300 to $500 per square foot. These are very short moments in time for us, though, because the reality is that the demand is far outstripping or outpacing the supply. And there's no question in my mind that 2021 becomes a very challenging year because we just don't have the inventory to keep up with the demand. And so while we have short-term affordability today, it is absolutely borrowed forward from 2021, where we see double-digit returns come back to our marketplace in a really aggressive way because we just don't have enough. We don't have enough inventory or housing stock to be able to support the residences of Vancouver.
I couldn't agree more with that. Not to get too, political, but I think the amount of unnecessary red tape that provinces and municipalities put in place that block a lot of developers from pushing projects through is a very basic place to start. Would you agree?
I think so. It's so challenging because it's easy. It's easy to share an opinion from the cheap seats at times. But what I do know is that we have so many young families that would love to buy real estate in Vancouver, and they're just not able to. And I think at some point we have to ask ourselves why that is. And I feel like the conversation of affordability has existed in our marketplace for as long as I can recall. From the time that I stepped foot into real estate, I remember everybody spoke about affordability. Every politician has used it as a campaign slogan in different parts of their campaign. And I feel like it's time for us to start understanding, like, really, what is affordability? How is somebody defining it? And then how are we holding some of our city officials, and how are we holding some of our public officials accountable to the promises that they're making? I think it is somewhat reckless that we have a provincial government that states that they're going to build over 110,000 rental units, and to date has built not a fraction. We're talking like fractions of percents of rental housing. And when we think about the serious lack of supply that we have in the townhouse marketplace in, say, for example, the North Shore, or we think about the lack of townhome supply in parts of the West Side, or we think about the lack of density that's being applied along very active commuting corridors throughout every major neighborhood of the Lower Mainland, it's no wonder that we're struggling to be able to deliver affordability. Everybody praises the need or raises the need for affordability, but very few are willing to do it or support it in their backyard. And I think that NIMBYism is at the heart of our challenge. And so I'm not necessarily certain how we can break through it, but it does feel like until we have far better understanding, far more transparency into the process, and that we have municipal, city, provincial officials that are willing to break free of the constraints of their voter base and make smart decisions for our city, I think that we're going to be in a very difficult place.
I agree. That's well said. I want to switch gears a little bit. A lot of my listeners, obviously real estate agents. I'm sure a lot of your expertise in sales and marketing, in particular with pre-construction units, can also be transferable to a realtor as well. So what are some of the key marketing strategies you have to think about when listing a property or properties for sale?
I think the most important one is that it all comes back to that neighborhood. And so every strategy that we work with our development partners is tailored towards the offering. So very early on in a program, we work hand in hand with our development partners and with any of our third-party partners. And third party, I mean interior design, creative design, architect. Our position is that we can build better homes if we have a better understanding about who we think that our potential audiences could be, and what the needs of those audiences really are. And so we spend incredible amounts of time understanding historical data, predictive data whenever we think that it's relevant, and then working with some of the best professionals in the Lower Mainland to try to shape product. This happens early in our envisioning and ideation sessions. It's something that is a hallmark of our programs. And so we think that great marketing strategy comes out of great building design. And in order to deliver exceptional building design, we need to understand what are the insights of our audiences, what are the needs of that audience, of all those prospective home buyers, and then what are the ones that we can insert into that program to make it special? What are the ones that we can insert into the building to make sure that it is actually meaningful real estate for those that are going to consider it as an opportunity in the future? We spend incredible effort trying to make sure that connection point between buyer and the homes that we're a part of crafting as strong as possible.
I love that. I think you see too many cookie cutter developments nowadays that don't necessarily reflect the neighborhood and the history and the people that comprise that neighborhood. So I think that's a really unique perspective when launching it for marketing.
Thank you. It's something that we feel passionate about. It ties very much back to our purpose as an organization. We want to build better homes. And in order to be able to do that, we have to understand at a far deeper level what those needs and what those wants are of our potential home buyers. And then we craft around that. So that's our starting place. We try to understand that as well as we can. And then we also attempt to understand the vision of our development partners. This is probably one of the most important parts of our program, because if we can understand whether this is a portfolio piece for them or whether this is truly a piece that's for the neighborhood, and they have deep roots within that neighborhood, and it is their passion to be able to bring homes that represent that neighborhood as authentically as possible to those potential purchasers, that means something to us. And so the outcomes of some of those early envisioning sessions find its way into the way that we share with those audiences. And so, for example, if we have if we're working with a fantastic developer that is passionate about maintaining the roots of commercial drive, for example, we understand low form is going to be something that's very, very important. We also recognize the importance of a grassroots campaign. We also recognize the need for many of those residences to look at alternative housing forms because the traditional is far too expensive. Primarily single family in that marketplace has crept above $2 million. And so to the average family, that's out of reach. So how do we deliver smaller format living with many of the amenities that they would expect inside of a single family home? Specifically, if we're to jump into one of the audiences of commercial drive, might be centered around young families. The need for example, the need for a mudroom, a hard working space within that home for them to be able to manage the transition from home to neighborhood is something that we want to incorporate into the building itself. It's something that we might want to incorporate into the actual home in terms of how we design a mudroom. And then how do we design a building that's going to support that? And then how do we also reach our target market and make sure that we're communicating that message in a really meaningful way?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I want to try and unpack that a little bit. So I'm sure the nature of sales has really changed for you, in the last, let's say 5 to 10 years, especially. Like I know it has, really has for me in my business for sure. For example, it was a lot easier to capture someone's attention 10 years ago than it is today with just the constant noise and information we're consumed with on a daily basis or an hourly basis or by the minute. And I think a lot of marketers fail to understand that, like the psychology of people and human behavior and the impact that has. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what can people do to penetrate through the noise and capture a prospective client's attention, even for a few seconds or minutes?
I think the most important thing to recognize right now, throughout specifically Metro Vancouver, is that there's an incredible change in population dynamics. So there's a change in the who, and the what and the where, like we've not seen before. Nearly half of all of our purchases are being driven by Generation X, Millennials, and Gen Ys. So how we share our offerings, how we storytell, how we shape the experience today has to be far more meaningful based off of who those audiences are. And so as our audience changes, we are trying to find ways of keeping up. Each group consumes information in such a different way. So you think about the way that a millennial, somebody that might be in their late 20s, is going to access and interact with information is going to be so different than the way that maybe my parents or my grandparents might access information. And so part of cutting through the noise is to recognize that and to build tailored platforms for each buyer group. In order to do that, you have to really understand who your buyer groups are at the point of design. And then you have to be very hyper-focused on how you pursue them. Because they have very different talking points, very different tones, and they have very different needs. And so they deserve, they certainly deserve to be treated that way. The other thing that we're certainly noticing is that one of the biggest opportunities for us is that as technology changes all parts of our life, when you think about what you're interacting with and how you're interacting with it, you think about Uber, or you think about Car2Go app, or you think about services on demand like DoorDash or Skip the Dishes. We're all getting very comfortable with platforms making recommendations, and we're also getting more and more comfortable with sharing data in order to have better recommendations made. And that allows us to have experience a little bit less friction in our journey of home buying. Out of that comes, I think, our industry's biggest opportunity, which is actually just learning. It's companies being able to offer a better level of experience, a better level of service, because we're paying a little bit closer attention. We understand our buyer groups a little bit more. And out of that learning allows us to understand a little bit more deeply. And that allows us to shape our connection points in a more meaningful way. So the way that we cut through the noise is making sure that we're no longer hunting the opportunity to share with a blowtorch or machine gun. We're actually looking for sniper rifles. We're looking to be very, very precise in terms of how we're going to share and where we're going to share and what we're actually going to share. And as we get better with that, I think that we're able to communicate more clearly to smaller groups of people that are going to be the right people that are going to be far more interested in that particular program.
Yeah, you have to be. I love that what you said there, like holding a sniper. Getting into that specifically, like, can you share anything specific that you do? Like, do you guys run, have you found success in like social paid ads, like on Facebook, for example?
I think the degree of success for any program is related to its buyer group. So we love social programs, specifically when we think about some of our wood frame, low rise opportunities. We're selling active programs in parts of Langley and parts of Coquitlam and Burnaby. In those marketplaces, we know that when it comes to low rise wood frame, it's traditionally a lower price point because it is wood as opposed to concrete. And out of that, a little bit of a younger buyer demographic. And so our campaigns that are tailored towards those subgroups, I think are built around social, because we know that, again, the way that a millennial is going to interact with that information is so unique. And so the majority of our advertising spend would be focused towards social and online media. Whereas if we were marketing an incredible building in parts of South Surrey, or on the doorstep to White Rock, in those moments, we're going to target more traditional ads, because we believe that older, more sophisticated downsizer is going to be reaching and accessing information in a different way, probably not nearly as engaged on Instagram, but far more engaged in local papers. And so we again do our very best to recognize that and then build that into our strategy.
Yeah, I love it. Very good. You touched on technology a couple of times. So I want to get into that. So another change, obviously, in the last several years has obviously been with technology and real estate. In your view, how has technology changed in real estate for you specifically? Like, what kind of trends are you seeing with technology in real estate?
It hasn't changed enough, or not nearly as enough as we'd like. We've had a marketplace where, for the most part, across Canada, 3 down years in 20. So if it's not broke, you don't fix it. And that's certainly been the case within our industry. I think that such strong growth across the country has resulted in somewhat of a stagnant, innovative process for real estate. I think that that's changing aggressively now. You see point of sale platforms such as a Vesdo come into the marketplace. That's absolutely redefined the Vancouver landscape. How we access inventory, how we share that inventory, how we manage our contracts, the experience that a buyer is now able to have when they walk into one of our pre-sales floors. Those are experiences that were absolutely not possible 5 years ago. And today it would be odd for you to walk through a pre-sale, a presentation center in Vancouver and be writing a contract on paper. So I think that we're early days in the transformation, but it is my guess that that transformation will happen very quickly, because many of those technology platforms that I talked about a little bit earlier that we're all accustomed to because of the convenience that they afford, really sets a new expectation for us in terms of what it should be like to buy real estate. And so I want it to be as easy to purchase a home from our organization as it is to order food from DoorDash. There's no reason why it can't feel a degree of what it feels like to order a cab on Uber, to ride hail on Uber. And I think that that's where our industry is going to be marching towards in the next 5 years. Those that figure that out, that are able to, again, leverage that data that comes out of that transaction or out of that exchange of information, are going to be the ones that are going to be able to build better product.
I agree. That's for sure. It hasn't changed enough. What are some of your, you mentioned one, what are some of your favorite tools that help you and your company sort of stay more productive, more efficient, they use in your business?
Oh, there's so many that come to mind. I mean, we use a Vesdo through every platform. Our CRM is very close to our hearts and how we automate our marketing and our communications. Our social media engines are part of our IP from our perspective now. We organize internally with programs such as Asana and EOS Traction, which incorporates everything from vision planning through to level 10 meetings. I think that we're also very sophisticated in terms of our forecasting program over program, both at a pro forma basis, but then also attempting to understand market timings So I feel like we rely probably on anywhere from 15 to 20 software platforms that are stitched together in a global architecture that allows us to be very, very reactive and very fast moving to these changes.
Very good. Yeah, you have to be, for sure. I'll definitely check out some of those apps. A lot of them are familiar as well. So look, Ryan, I know we are cutting it a bit short for time, but I do like to end off each chat with what I call the top 3. You ready?
Yeah, fire. Looking forward to it.
All right. Number 1, your favorite business or real estate book?
The one that comes to mind right away is Jim Collins' Good to Great. It's probably a book that I've read 30 times. I train a ton. I love running and I love cycling. So that'll be the general book that I'll have on repeat if I'm looking for some entertainment while I'm out on a long ride. I do love Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Not necessarily a business book, but what I love about that is the 10,000 hour rule and just the need to master, the need to spend time, focus time, to be patient and to make sure that you're really learning your craft. That's something that stands out. And I know that I'm jumping around here. The third that I would say that comes to mind is probably going to be a book by Christopher McDougall called Born to Run. Not necessarily a business book, but again, kind of similar to Outliers. To be really good at something, you have to work very hard at it.
Some great recommendations. Are you more of an audiobook guy or you're a reader?
I love audiobook. I train regularly for endurance sports. And so because of that, it gives me a lot of time on pavement or a lot of time on the bike. So without audio, I'd probably go crazy. Nice.
Number 2, your favorite vacation spot?
Favorite vacation spot is probably home for me. I love going up to the Okanagan in summer months. So that would be the top of my list. And if there was to be a quick second in there, we spend a lot of time at our home in Whistler as well. And that's a very special place to my family.
Nice. Believe it or not, I've never been to BC at all.
And I agree to do a podcast with you. We have to fix that, Kosa. And when you when you do drop in, make sure you give me a ring and I'll show you around.
100%. And lastly, if you can go back, what's the one thing you wish you knew when you were just starting out in real estate?
I love this question. I'm going to say patience. I think that so many of us have this internal drive to always be better in ourselves. And I think that there's times where that's a really powerful piece of our personality. But I think there's other times where it causes us to maybe move past a skill or move past an opportunity faster than we should. So if I could go back in time, I would do my very best to encourage myself to slow down and to get very good at something before you move on.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect way to end this, because I say this all the time. And as a runner, you probably relate, business is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think too many people, they want to get to the finish line without running the race. So
I completely agree. I completely agree with you, Kosa. It's certainly something that I notice a lot in some of the great team members that work within our organization. And I think those that thrive and those that become just incredible leaders, and we have so many of them within the company, are generally the ones that really have been patient, really leaned on the leaders above them, and really honed their craft. And I think that if we could all endeavor to do that a little bit more often, I think all of us would be far better at our day-to-days.
Totally agree. Well, Ryan, thank you so much. This was a very insightful, very informative chat. I think a lot of people are going to get a ton of value from it, and definitely going to take you up on that offer when I'm in Vancouver, BC.
If it's in the summer months, I'm gonna encourage you to bring some trunks, and if it's winter, let's get some laps in up at Whistler.
All right, done deal. All right, Ryan, thanks so much. Appreciate it yet again.
Love it, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Top Agent Podcast by Web for Realty. By the way, we're providing exclusive promos to our listeners. Visit webforrealty.com/topagent and get your first month on us. That's webforrealty.com/topagent to get your first month of service completely free. Until next time, over and out. Peace.